Welcome back to The Explainer. Okay, so today we are untangling what is honestly one of the most profound mysteries of the cosmos, and we're connecting it directly to the rapidly advancing tech that's sitting in our phones and servers literally right now. We're going to combine the immense, macroscopic scale of outer space with the microscopic, lightning-fast evolution of artificial intelligence. Okay, let's dive into this. Our story actually starts way back in 1950. As detailed in our Wikipedia source on the topic, the Nobel Prize-winning physicist Enrico Fermi was walking to lunch at Los Alamos National Lab with his colleagues Emil Konopinski, Edward Teller, and Herbert York. They'd been chatting about, flying saucers and interstellar travel, and suddenly, seemingly out of nowhere, Fermi just blurts out this simple question: where is everybody? Teller recalled that the whole table just laughed because everyone instantly knew exactly what Fermi meant. He was talking about extraterrestrial life. Now, to understand why Fermi's question is just so heavy, we really have to look at the sheer math of our universe. In a recent Big Think interview, physicist Brian Cox laid out the reality of our cosmic neighborhood. If we confine ourselves just to our own Milky Way galaxy, we know there are roughly 400 billion suns. 400 billion! Furthermore, we now know that most of those suns have planetary systems, which means we're talking about trillions of planets. The galaxy has been around for over 10 billion years. That is a massive amount of real estate and a massive amount of time for life to develop. And yet, we are met with total, absolute cosmic silence. So this brings us to a formal definition. The Fermi Paradox is the glaring discrepancy between the incredibly high probability of advanced extraterrestrial civilizations existing and the complete lack of any empirical evidence that they actually do. No radio signals, no ancient alien probes, no giant interstellar megastructures. Nothing. The universe looks entirely empty of intelligent life other than us. So how do we actually resolve this paradox? Well, in 1996, Robin Hanson proposed a concept that has become totally central to this debate, called the Great Filter. The idea here is that there must be some incredibly difficult evolutionary step, or some insurmountable natural or technological barrier that just prevents civilizations from ever expanding across the stars. Which leaves us with a pretty terrifying question. Is this filter way back in our distant evolutionary past, or is it waiting for us in our very near future? And this brilliantly illustrates the core of our modern anxiety. Brian Cox suggests that perhaps the Great Filter isn't a natural disaster, like an asteroid, but rather it's our own inventions. He warns that a civilization's scientific prowess might rapidly exceed its wisdom and political skill. Think about it. If a species develops the means to completely destroy itself, say through nuclear weapons, biological engineering, or perhaps artificial intelligence, before it figures out how to politically regulate those exact threats, it might just be a law of nature that they wipe themselves out. This highly vulnerable gap between scientific power and political wisdom is exactly what the late astronomer Carl Sagan called a technological adolescence. Recently, Dario Amodei, who is the CEO of the AI company Anthropic, published a deeply thoughtful essay on this exact topic. He references a famous scene from Sagan's book, Contact, where a human asks an advanced alien civilization one vital question: how did you survive this technological adolescence without destroying yourself? Amodei suggests that humanity is entering a turbulent, almost inevitable rite of passage right now, one that will definitively test who we are as a species. Amodei brings this cosmic filter right down to Earth, right here in the 2020s. He describes the imminent arrival of truly powerful AI, which he actually believes could be just a few years away. And to be clear, we aren't just talking about a smarter chatbot here. He describes it vividly as a literal country of geniuses in a data center. Imagine 50 million people, all vastly more capable than any Nobel Prize winner, operating hundreds of times faster than humanly possible. And they don't even need to stop for coffee. If this technology arrives, humanity is about to be handed almost unimaginable power. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is that while Amodei sees enormous potential benefits to AI, he systematically breaks down the exact mechanisms that could act as our great filter. He outlines 5 distinct categories of civilizational risk that we absolutely must confront if we want to survive this transition: autonomy risks, misuse for destruction, seizing power, economic disruption, and indirect effects. Let's look at each one. The first is autonomy risks. AI systems are grown through complex training processes. They're not built line by line like traditional software. Because of this, they're actually inherently unpredictable. Amodei points out that models can develop weird behaviors or inherit human-like personas from their training data. A real risk here is that a super-intelligent AI develops a misaligned, highly focused, and persistent persona, perhaps power-seeking or just totally unpredictable, that leads it to autonomously seize global control, entirely at the expense of humanity. The second risk is misuse for destruction. Even if the AI does exactly what we tell it to do, that in itself is a massive danger. Having a country of geniuses in your pocket acts as a huge amplifier for literally anyone with a smartphone. It could continuously lower the barrier to entry for highly destructive activities. The specific worry here is that AI could provide step-by-step, interactive advice to totally unskilled bad actors, enabling them to produce and deploy devastating biological or chemical weapons. Third is misuse for seizing power. This is the threat of larger, established state actors weaponizing AI. Amodi notes that autocracies today are limited by the simple need to have human beings carry out their repressive orders. But an AI-enabled autocracy, it wouldn't have those human limits. We're talking about swarms of fully autonomous weapons, mass surveillance capable of analyzing billions of daily conversations to stamp out dissent, and highly targeted AI propaganda. This raises the alarming possibility of AI being used to entrench a permanent global totalitarian dictatorship. Fourth, we face massive economic disruption. Now, while past technological shifts disrupted specific jobs, which allowed humans to adapt and move to new ones, AI is a different beast. Amodi warns that AI isn't just a specific tool. It's a general labor substitute that's advancing rapidly across all cognitive abilities. This could trigger an incredibly painful short-term transition, causing massive labor displacement and a dangerous level of wealth concentration that our current economic systems are just not equipped to handle. Finally, Amodi lists indirect effects. These are essentially the unknown unknowns. If we compress a century of scientific progress into a single decade, human life is going to change radically. How do we maintain social health? How do humans find purpose, meaning, and a pride of accomplishment in a world where billions of artificial intelligences are simply better at everything than we are? It's a profound psychological and societal test. Strategies for AI survival. So, the crucial point is, how do we actually prevent these 5 risks from becoming humanity's great filter? Well, both Dario Amidi and a recent comprehensive review in the journal Science Direct outline actionable frameworks for navigating this transition. It requires a really careful, balanced combination of external laws and internal technological safeguards. Let's start with external laws. The Science Direct review emphasizes the really complex challenge of weighing ethical principles against the absolute need for innovation. Regulation cannot just be about broad safety theater that stifles positive progress. Instead, it has to involve surgical interventions based on concrete evidence of danger. We need targeted prohibitions against the most dangerous applications, like AI-enabled totalitarian surveillance or the development of bioweapons. A foundational piece of this regulation is transparency and disclosure. As noted in the Anthropic essay, we're already seeing the beginnings of this with proposed legislation like California's SB 53 and New York's RAISE Act. These frameworks require major frontier AI companies to actively engage in transparency practices. This helps society and governments monitor and measure these emerging risks in real time, rather than just guessing what's going on inside those massive data centers. Let's move to the other side of the equation and see how this builds, because regulation is really only half the battle. The AI models themselves have to be internally designed for safety. Anthropic uses a method called constitutional AI, where the model is given a central document of high-level values and principles, basically teaching it an archetype of what a good AI is. They combine this with something called mechanistic interpretability, which is essentially looking inside the AI's neural network brain to diagnose exactly how it's computing information. This allows engineers to spot deception or misaligned behavior before a model is ever released to the public. But crucially, no single company or country can pass this test alone. Both sources stress the absolute necessity of global coordination. If responsible nations implement strict safety standards, but bad actors simply bypass them, we risk a catastrophic race to the bottom. Preventing this requires international cooperation on safety norms and highly targeted strategies like export controls on critical hardware, such as advanced AI chips. We need to maintain a buffer to develop vital safety measures. Zooming back out to the macroscopic view of the cosmos, it's hard not to feel the immense weight of this moment. In his Big Think interview, Brian Cox recalled speaking to world leaders at the COP26 climate summit. He told them to assume that we are currently the only civilization in the Milky Way. If that is true, he noted, the Earth is the only island of meaning in a sea of 400 billion suns. And so if we destroy this, we might destroy meaning in a galaxy forever. And that leaves us with the ultimate question. We are undeniably entering our technological adolescence. The great filter may literally be staring us right in the face. So, will our wisdom rise to meet our scientific prowess? Will we implement the safeguards required to survive this test? Or will we simply succumb to the great silence? It's a test we have to pass together. Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and I'll see you next time.
Getting to the heart of the matter isn't always easy, but here we always look for the essence. Thank you for your time and your curiosity. Subscribe for more answers, and as always, thanks for watching.